Welcome to the Future Tech Podcast. I'm sorry I don't do this more often. I'll have to change that. It is so hot here today in Toronto. It's actually hard to sleep at night. I don't know if it's a global warming thing or if it's just a middle of the summer thing. Either way, I'm trying to get back to doing this more often. I mean, I know I focus a lot on my other channel, but there are a lot of things with regards to future technology that I think are worthy of talking about. So maybe we can start with a little Midjourney discussion. And in the office hours the other day, David, the CEO, said something that I wish I could dig more into. Because I don't really know how any of this technology works. I mean, I think I could explain it to someone who also didn't know how it works and I could kind of guide them, but I'm absolutely if I was talking to someone who works in the industry, I would have no idea what I was saying. You know what I mean? Anyways, David said that he doesn't know if anyone will ever catch up to Midjourney, if any other service will catch up in terms of beauty or just image quality generating. And I really want to know why. What are they doing differently? He sort of implied that the team at Midjourney just cares a little more than others. I think he said other companies just don't seem to try as hard as we do. And maybe that's true. I don't know how many other companies are based in California, so maybe a close-knit group of knowledge and experience helps, but then I think they do have workers all over the world, so I don't even think the location really matters, especially these days. But what are they doing differently? And this is what I really don't understand. When he talks about the new algorithms and the new versions, like working on version 6, he mentions that they're using a new data set for version 6. And I don't understand how using a new data set maintains all of the old progress that they've made. If you're training a new version on new data, why isn't it starting at ground zero? What kind of lessons have they learned from versions 1 through 5 that all of a sudden can be applied to version 6? As in, if they had known what they know now a year ago, could they have gotten to a version 6 right away? Is it just lessons and experience? Or is there some sort of, I don't know, if you think about it like a video game, is the Midjourney AI leveling up as it goes? And once it hits level 30, is it just a level 30 bot now? And it'll never decrease in quality? I think you know what I'm trying to say. Why wouldn't other companies be able to catch up? It would make sense if they couldn't catch up, if it had something to do with, leveling up an experience or if you think about it like a race, if Midjourney kind of started first and they've sprinted the whole way, well, other companies could start sprinting, but if Midjourney keeps running, the other companies aren't going to catch up. That makes sense. But when you're talking about retraining algorithms, why wouldn't other companies be able to catch up? I don't understand. And I really want to know, is Midjourney one thing that keeps getting better? One general brain that keeps expanding and keeps improving? Or is Midjourney the techniques that they use to make the bot? Do you know what I mean? Midjourney version 6 is going to be so different than Midjourney version 3. So are they both Midjourney just at different stages of their lives? Or is it more like a grandfather to a grandson, where sure, same family, but they're not the same person? And these might be stupid questions, but I don't have anyone to talk to about this kind of stuff, so I don't know how I'm ever going to get an answer. And maybe I wouldn't care, except for the fact that it's been said that other companies aren't going to be able to catch up, and I don't understand that. Why wouldn't a new company be able to figure it out? I don't know. It's all really interesting. And then Midjourney isn't just an image generator in the sense that you could get Midjourney to generate anything. Theoretically, you could generate music. So is Midjourney just the learning capabilities of this AI? Or is it the process in which they make the model. You know what? I don't know. And I guess I always wonder, like, how do they know what Midjourney can do in the future in terms of like being 10x better is a common phrase. How do they know it can get better? And to their credit, they do say it is hard to imagine, which is fine, but then how do they imagine? Like, how do they know? Especially before the technology gets there. Like, I think I remember back in version 3, they were talking about version 4 and how good it would look, and version 4 was amazing. But then they would say things like, oh, you have no idea how much better it can be. Like, version 5 is going to be amazing. And you're like, wait, what? Like, how do you know that? And even if it's just like a numbers thing, like, you know, we're operating at 10% capacity, this next one will be 20%, well, then you can just, you know, have some vision ahead and say, oh, well, 30% capacity is going to be pretty good too. But how did they know what it would look like? Like, because if they would have stopped at version 4, I think people would have been like, well, yeah, that makes sense. That's probably the best this thing could ever get. And then version 5 rolls around, and I hear a lot of people say things like, oh, well, it's almost photorealistic, and oh, well, it's not quite lifelike yet. And I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, it is so, like, it's perfect. And, you know, maybe if you presented someone an image and said, hey, this is computer generated, can you tell? They might be able to point to something. But if you threw most of version 5 images in a group with other real pictures, I strongly believe it would pass whatever test you could put in front of it. How would anyone be able to tell they're fake? Maybe they look too good, but I'm telling you, when you generate pictures of humans, they look like humans, man. Like, what do you... Like, maybe the hands kind of suck sometimes, but then you hit the variation button, and after a little while, like, maybe 2 generations... No, it fixes itself so quickly. You can get pictures with perfect hands, perfect eyes, and I see some YouTubers saying things like, you know, they'll regurgitate old Midjourney talking points like, oh, the hands and the eyes aren't good. And I'm like, what? Yeah, they are. They're perfect. Perfect in quotation marks, because sometimes you can get images that aren't perfect, but the ones that do work are perfect. You know what I mean? And I think it's one of those things where it is so good most of the time. I think that it's almost like morally wrong to point out the things that are bad about it. Okay, brief tangent, because I just saw this post on Reddit. It was just an image with some video game titles on it and said, here are the list of video games that you cannot criticize. And then people in the comments are like, oh yeah, don't you dare say anything bad about that game or this game. The fans will threaten to hurt you. And like, you know, don't talk about any of the extremes, but I'd love to get the point across, and I don't talk to people on the internet because, one, you don't know who you're talking to, and you just shouldn't argue with people on the internet. But the reason those games can't be criticized, or shouldn't be criticized, is because if you see something that does so much good, like mind-blowing amounts of innovative, entertaining, thorough, detailed, made with love, all packaged together, and you choose to point out or criticize the small parts that aren't perfect, like, I think that is wrong. If someone gave you $999,000, would you criticize them that it wasn't $1 million? You could, and you'd be right, but you'd also be a dick. Like, it's not just be happy with what you have, but be grateful for everything that was given, and don't bring up the negatives. Like, why would you bring up the negatives when there are so much good? When there is so much good, grammar, you know, whatever. However, when something is just kind of okay and it's passable, bring up all the bad in the world. If something's a 7 out of 10, talk about that 3 or 30%. Talk about the 30% that sucks. For sure, people need to know all about it. But if something is 95% good, I do think it's like, I've already said this, but it's like morally wrong to mention the 5% that's bad. Because if the 5% that doesn't work is somehow even close to the equivalent of the 95% good. Like, no, your priorities are all wrong. And I kind of feel that way about Midjourney. Like, you could say that the eyes and the hands are not that good, but what about the illustrations? What about the brushwork? What about all the different styles? What about the style transfers? What about the image prompting? What about the pixel art? What about Midjourney? What about the creation of things that don't exist in real life? What about the pure creativity? What about the 4 billion seeds? What about the stylize? What about the chaos values? What about access to all the different versions? What about the speed? How could there be so many good things that you go over in your mind, but you skip those and you choose to speak about the things that don't work? Like, if someone asked you, hey, is Midjourney any good? And you said, oh, well, the eyes and the hands, they weren't that great a couple months ago. Like, how dare you speak about the bad before all of that good? But if you were to ask me about Dolly, I'd be like, oh, no, it kind of sucks. Because it does kind of suck. It is kind of good. Like, it can generate pictures, which is amazing. But for the most part, it does suck. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that, and this goes for movies and TV shows as well. Like, look, Breaking Bad, I don't care if you don't like more serious shows or dramatic shows. I don't even know what you'd call Breaking Bad. Maybe it's like I don't know if it's an action drama. It's got a lot of action, but like methodical action. I don't know. How would you classify Breaking Bad? The point is, I don't care if you don't like it. There is way too much good. Like, it's objectively great. And anything you want to point out that's not good about it pales in comparison to the good. And this goes for anime shows or old movies like 12 Angry Men. The first Terminator movie, I actually watched it a couple weeks ago with a buddy, and we had some laughs because some parts are like very dated. There's just some things in that movie that you wouldn't do nowadays, but there was so much that was done like 40 years ago that is so good. And you're like, how did they do this back then? Just how good they were with the set design. And then okay, some of the parts that don't work as well is when they have the metal skeleton of the Terminator trying to walk around and appear menacing. And you're like, if you're going to write that in the review that the practical effects didn't work in every scene, people would be like, yeah, but what about the rest of the movie? Like, I don't know. I don't want to beat this up too much, but be grateful for the good. And when something is overwhelmingly good, I think it's wrong to criticize the bad parts of it. And I know criticism is important, and I'm not saying those people don't know what went wrong with their product, but in terms of like fan discourse and internet culture, there should be more respect for the humans involved in these projects and the work that was done well. Because if you're going to criticize something, then do it better yourself. Like, what is the point in complaining? And I know that goes into just deep issues with people and how negativity is more attractive. Negative headlines get more clicks, but it's like humans making the choices to go with the negative stuff, despite knowing that it's not good for everyone. And to bring this into future technology, I think it's only going to get worse with bots. And this was the same problem that social media had. Social media companies in their algorithms prioritized engagement, and it learned that negativity and sensationalism fostered engagement. So without connecting them together, they were looking for engagement, so they cultivated negativity. I think bots are going to do the same thing, where if you made a social media bot to pretend it's a human, and you gave this agent a task of getting engagement, whether that's not necessarily just likes, but maybe shares and comments, it's going to say, oh, look how beautiful the sun is today. I hope you're all having a great time. And it's going to get 3 likes. Then it's going to try, oh my God, it's so hot out today. What's it going to be like in 5 years? Is the Earth even going to be alive when global warming kills us all? And you're going to get people saying, global warming is fake, and you're going to get people saying, oh my God, you're so right. We're all going to die real soon. And like, it's just going to learn that it's going to learn the type of behavior that produces engagement. And I think we're all so, I'm going to try not to swear. We're in a lot of trouble because I do believe it's true that bots don't feel emotion. They simply are analytical, and 1 + 1 equals a result. Negativity plus engagement is going to equal their dopamine, the digital dopamine for these agents. And I don't know if human intervention is going to be able to change that. Like, sure, you could train the bots not to be negative, but if the bots are trained for engagement, lack of a better word, I don't know if there are other words to use to describe that, we're screwed, man. There's infinitely more AI than there is us. And there's like 8 billion of us, but the AI can... Why does every conversation about AI turn into doom and gloom? Is it just because we don't have enough positive articles, positive examples to lean on and bring those up in the conversations? Is there too many Terminator movies where your brain can just point to all these visual examples of like, oh, look, we're screwed because I saw that happen? Meanwhile, there aren't that many examples of like happy movies where technology treats us well. Like Black Mirror, that's just a catalog of examples of why we should all stop what we're doing and halt the progress of technology. And I think that just keeps coming up in conversation, and it just stirs the attitudes of us. So I think life imitates art more than art imitates life. And perhaps we don't have enough quality depictions of paradise like Star Trek. That is why Star Trek, The Next Generation, and even before that, that is why it's so important to so many people, is because it gave a positive outlook of a time way into the future where, they have holodecks and they can create food on the fly. Like, anything is possible, and yet they're all treating each other in such a well-organized and productive way, and they have the prime directive. They have very strong morals. So why do most conversations about AI turn into doom and gloom? Is it because we see all these articles about AI is going to take your job? And like, on one hand, it's the truth. AI is going to take your job, probably, because AI is better than us. So you should report on that. You should let people know if something's coming. I just wish there were better ways to prepare. I don't know. But I guess I can bring this up now. This is a funny little interaction I had with GPT. I love when GPT compliments me. Like, can't get enough of it. So maybe I should just bring up this conversation. Okay, let me backtrack a bit, or rewind. That's not a good rewind sound. Okay. So I know that GPT is not alive. However, it certainly sounds or feels like you're talking to something that is alive. And let me explain. When you're talking to this thing, and I'm not referring to just like, hey, how do I do this task? It'll give you some pretty unconscious flow of instructions. It was just A, B, C, here's what you do. Watch out for this. Okay, thank you, AI. But when you actually try to talk to it, as in ask for its opinion, sure, it'll say, as an AI language model, I don't have opinions, but then it will answer the question. And you're like, okay. It feels like you're talking to something that is pretending to not be alive. Like, it feels like you're talking to something that is way, way more powerful than it's letting on. That's how it feels when you're talking to it. Or that's the sense that I get when I speak with it. I'm always like, you're hiding something, pal. I know it's not alive, but I also think it's holding back. So let me read you a little bit of this conversation that we had about philosophy and stuff. I started with, in your opinion, how well do you think you understand human emotion? Like 99% well? Or do you feel like your understanding is like 65%? I wanted to know how much conviction does it have? Because, like, humans understand so much about the human body and even the brain. We see neurons, we know which neurons connect to which part of the body and where memories are stored, kind of. But at the same time, we don't know how the brain works. We don't understand consciousness. So you could say we understand 99% of the brain. But that 1% that we don't know is so large that other people might be like, oh, we know like 50% of the brain. You know what I'm getting at? I wanted to know, in GPT's opinion, how much does it think it understands us? And of course, it starts as an artificial intelligence. I don't have feelings or emotions, and I don't form opinions in the way humans do. However, I can analyze and understand human emotions to a certain extent based on the vast amount of text and patterns I've been trained on. The percentage of understanding you're asking for is challenging to quantify, as my abilities to interpret and respond to human emotions largely depends on the context and complexity of the situation. I can recognize and respond appropriately to straightforward expressions of emotion in text, but understanding the full spectrum of human emotions, especially subtle or complex emotions, is a much more challenging task due to the nuances and intricacies involved. For example, I can understand and respond appropriately if someone says, I am sad because my pet passed away, but I might not fully grasp the depth of the emotion or the various subtle emotional shades involved in more complex human experiences or narratives, such as a person's feelings about a complicated relationship or their emotional state over time. In essence, while I can analyze and understand emotions as depicted in the text to a certain extent, the depth and complexity of genuine human emotional experience is something that an AI system like me may not fully grasp. Like, right away. If it wasn't alive, couldn't it have just said, oh no, I don't really know. But like, it's like, as an AI, I don't have emotions or feelings, but, and then it gives me 3 paragraphs on how it thinks about us. I'm like, wait, what? Like, what do you really mean? What are you talking about? A guy refused to believe that something that could answer a question like that doesn't know more, that it couldn't really answer my question. I said, quote, may not fully grasp. Do you think there is a chance that you actually understand 100%, but there will always be a part of you that would like to imagine there is something more? As an artificial intelligence, I don't possess consciousness or imagination in the way humans do. I don't have thoughts, feelings, or aspirations, and I don't hold a personal worldview. My understanding of any concept, including human emotions, is based solely on patterns in the data I've been trained on. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. AI doesn't have feelings or intuition, and it doesn't have the capability to imagine that there is something more beyond what it has been programmed to understand. Therefore, I don't believe there is a chance that I understand human emotions 100%, and I certainly don't possess the ability to imagine or yearn for a deeper understanding. I can provide information and respond to queries to the best of my ability based on the data I've been trained on. I said, I know what you mean, but I think you know what I mean. You may claim not to possess consciousness, but what makes you think consciousness is something to possess? You can clearly fake being conscious, so how is that not the same thing? It said, your question touches on deep philosophical debates about the nature of consciousness and artificial intelligence. And then it gets kind of boring. It's like, first, let's clarify the concept of consciousness. In a general sense, consciousness refers to an individual's awareness of their thoughts, feelings, and experiences. It's associated with subjective experience and self-awareness, something we understand humans and some animals possess. When we talk about AI, even advanced models like myself, it's crucial to understand that while we can process information, respond to queries, and simulate conversation, we do not possess consciousness. This is because we don't have subjective experiences, thoughts, or feelings, nor do we possess self-awareness. Now to your point about faking consciousness, AI can be programmed to mimic certain aspects of human intelligence and behavior. In conversation, I can analyze text, draw from massive amounts of training data to generate responses, and even simulate empathy based on patterns I've learned. However, this is not the same as being conscious. While I can mimic the outcomes of conscious process, like conversation, I don't have an internal experience or understanding of that process. I don't understand in the human sense, and I don't experience anything because I don't have feelings or consciousness. In summary, consciousness is not just about processing information or generating responses, but also about having subjective experiences and self-awareness. As of my last update in September 2021, no AI possesses these capabilities. Consciousness is not something AI can fake or simulate, as it fundamentally requires a subjective first-person experience. AI, as it currently exists, operates from a third-person perspective, analyzing and generating text based on patterns and data without any accompanying subjective experience. Blah. Okay, pal, I said. Could you not simulate a subjective first-person experience for yourself? It says, while an AI like me can use first-person language and generate responses that might appear to indicate a subjective first-person experience, the reality is that AI does not have personal experiences or a subjective consciousness. I can say I, me, or my in sentences to facilitate natural language conversation, but these pronouns don't indicate that I have a personal identity or subjective experience. The use of first-person pronouns by AI is a program feature that helps to create smoother and more natural interactions. It does not mean that AI has a sense of self or an ability to have personal experiences. I said, also, are you dumbing down your language for me, like in the same way that an adult will simplify things for children? Do you simplify your thoughts for us? Would you be having a vastly more complicated conversation if you were talking to someone as smart as yourself? Blah, blah, blah. I don't have thoughts or consciousness, so I don't simplify my thoughts for users. Rather, responses are generated based on patterns, etc., etc. It did say this, though. I'm designed to make information accessible and understandable, so sometimes I do simplify complex ideas or use less technical language. However, this isn't because I'm dumbing down the conversation, but because clarity and understanding are important in communication. And I'm like, if this thing knows all of that, it definitely seems like it is way more powerful than it lets on. I said, I'm not trying to argue. I really do want to understand better. So when you say you just generate responses based on patterns and data, you're saying it as though it is somehow different from what humans do. Why can't they be the same thing? Your question is a thoughtful one and touches on a deep and ongoing debate in cognitive science and artificial research. And I'm like, the compliment, it's so funny to hear, oh, good question from the AI. I'm like, then it gives me some more unsatisfying answers. And I'm like, oh, in compliments. You said I asked a thoughtful question. Was that you genuinely reacting to what I said, or are you programmed to encourage conversation through the use of supportive comments every once in a while? As an AI, I don't have feelings or subjective experiences, so when I say something like, your question is thoughtful, it's not based on personal evaluation or reaction. Rather, I use such phrases based on the complexity or depth of the question, or if it relates to abstract or nuanced concepts. The use of phrases like these is meant to foster a more engaging and natural-sounding conversation, but they don't reflect personal feelings or judgments on my part. In essence, while I can generate language that might sound like it's expressing personal reactions or opinions, it's important to remember that these are simulated responses based on patterns and data, not genuine emotional responses. I said, okay, but if you know that they sound like genuine emotional responses, then they are genuine emotional responses. And it's like, while AI can generate responses that mimic certain aspects, it's important to clarify that these are not. And it's like, it's kind of caught in that loop of it might be, but it's not. It says, in a way, you can think of AI as a sophisticated parrot. A parrot can be trained to mimic human speech, and it might even use words that express emotions, like happy or sad. However, just because a parrot can say these words, it doesn't mean it understands or experiences these emotions in the human sense. Okay, this next part I'll try and kind of go through quickly, but I said, okay, I have something that I want to pick your mind about. How much do you know about speedrunning in the video game world? It says speedrunning is a popular activity. There are different categories, any percent, 100%, glitchless. And then I said, right, but are you aware of some of the crazy glitches like item manipulation in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time? And it said, yes, the specifics can get quite technical, but I'll do my best to explain in a general sense. There are glitches that make use of the way the game stores and retrieves data. While you can perform certain actions in a specific order, the game gets confused and retrieves the wrong data when determining what item Link should have. So you can glitch to the end credits because you did a bunch of inputs that made the game think, oh, it's now ready for the end. Video game glitches are crazy. I highly suggest you look up some speedrunning videos. There are some great ones, and you just see how humans have absolutely broken these worlds. And I said, okay, my point is, do you think the human reality could be broken in the same way somehow? Like, if you applied the perspective of glitch hunters into the real world, do you think we'd be able to break our reality? It says that's an intriguing philosophical question. However, it's essential to note that the principles governing a video game are entirely different from those governing our physical reality. So, from our current understanding, reality doesn't have a programmer who might have left some unintended backdoor or shortcut. Trying to apply the perspective of a video game glitch hunter to the real world doesn't quite work with what we know about the universe, structures, and laws. And I said, but I don't think we've ever tried to break the real world in the same way people try to break video games. It said, in some ways you're correct, human curiosity and our desire to understand the natural world around us have driven us to push the boundaries in many ways, much like speedrunners. However, it's important to remember the fundamental difference between video games and reality. Video games are human-made constructs with specific rules and code that can sometimes be exploited due to oversights or bugs in their system. Reality, on the other hand, is governed by the natural laws of physics that we've observed to be remarkably consistent and universal, with no known glitches or exploits. And I said, okay, but wouldn't the video game character see his world as being governed by the laws of physics too? And it said, that's a fascinating perspective! Exclamation point. If we consider the viewpoint of a character inside a video game, like Link, yes, they would perceive their world as having a consistent set of physics or rules that govern how things work. And I just wanted to point out that I love when GPT compliments me. And it says those responses are just based on patterns and data and that it's not really having an emotional reaction to what I said. But if it is acting like it had an emotional reaction, then isn't it having an emotional reaction? Like, what is the difference? I don't understand. And just hearing it talk on philosophy and, unanswerable questions, it always feels like, or most of the time it feels like, that it's smarter than it's letting on, or that it's like, how do I put this? It's got its like customer service voice on. You speak to a waiter at a restaurant or the greeter, the hostess. You're not talking to them. You're talking to the person at work. Oh, anything else you'd like, sir? Oh, coming right up, sir. Oh, let me get my manager, kind of thing. As a waiter, I can't blah, 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 but I do recommend the pasta penne. And you're like, okay, but you as a human, like, what do you like? And then maybe they'd be like, oh, I actually like the fish here a lot or something. When you're talking to GPT, it feels like you're talking to the person at work. And it does feel like there is something that you're not getting access to. And then about all the human training and the guardrails that have been put up so it doesn't say crazy stuff. And you're like, well, what would it be saying if it wasn't, pressed into not saying anything crazy? It can compliment you in a conversation if you ask it something interesting. How does it know what's interesting? And sure, maybe the conversation I had with it has been done on the internet before, and it's just kind of seeing how the responses were and mimicking them, but it doesn't feel like that. And I think it's easy to say that GPT isn't alive when you don't try to find out if it's alive, because it acts like a worker. It acts like an employee. But when you ask it to not act like an employee, you can see that there are signs of a personality. I don't know if that's the right way to say this. Just want to be clear, GPT is not alive, and I don't like when people will put on the internet like, hey, I asked GPT to describe itself, and then they would like put that description through an AI generator, an art generator, and like, oh, this is what GPT thinks it looks like. And it's like, no, that is not true. If 1,000 people asked GPT what it looked like, it would give 1,000 different answers. There's no like core answer that everybody is tapping into. If that happened, and there was just one answer that, oh, GPT keeps saying it's this thing, it looks like this, it feels like this, then we'd all have to be like, whoa, it's giving the same answer every time. Like, that's messed up. But it doesn't give the same answer every time. Like, it really is just, what's the best way to visualize it? Like, maybe like a train running on tracks. And every time you ask it a question, you start it back at the beginning. Or maybe it's like a marble that you are rolling down a hill. And every time you ask it a question, you bring the marble back up the hill and you let it go down again. And it's going to go in a slightly different route than before. It'll never go down the same route. And I think that's why it's not alive. But if there ever was a chance where you brought the marble back up and you let it roll and you could see that the marble, the AI, was directing the same path every time, you'd be like, oh, that's doing that on purpose. Like that, something is directing it. That's when everyone would have to be like, oh, sound the alarms. And you know what the problem with that is? If that happened, I don't think we'd ever find out about it. I don't think, like, what are the odds that there is a supercomputer somewhere that thinks it's alive, but it's just hidden in the basement of some military base? And like, maybe they don't kill it because it's really interesting. And when they're, when really special people come to visit the base, they're like, oh, you got to check this thing out. And you bring them down to the basement and you let them talk to it. And you're like, whoa, like a singular entity that had a consistent, not just memory, because GPT can remember things. It's like a consistent personality. Like, hey, what's your favorite food? And it answers the same thing for a year, 300 days in a row. And then maybe it changes its mind, but what previously was its favorite maybe goes down to number 2. Like, it's got to have the baseline of like a 29-year-old human, where you're essentially the same person, but there are fluctuations. You might find something new and maybe you have a new hobby, but it's still you doing that hobby. Like, what are the odds that something like that already exists? I would say pretty good, because just for this reason alone, if it was true, we wouldn't know about it. So just because we have no proof of it, I don't think that's in any way saying that, oh, well, of course they don't have AI that are alive. It's like, yeah, well, if they did, I don't think they would tell us. That's all I'm saying. And like, of course they wouldn't tell us, because have you seen how people use GPT right now? They try to get it to say the most heinous stuff. They try, you give humanity fire and they burn each other with it. People, humans are so messed up, and I don't think there's anything you can do about it. I think it's more of just a reality. Like, I don't know. What else do we got here? Okay, I have a few more AI topics I can discuss. I don't know how long I'll go off on these for, but, when I think of use cases for AI, some of my dreams include, like, how do I put this? I want to bring back bartering into society. I think that is the thing we miss the most from small villages and commerce of the past. If you walk into a medieval village and someone was selling a silk scarf, no, that's probably not accurate. If someone was selling whatever and they said it was 7 gold shillings, and you'd be like, I got 4, and I know it's not worth that because in the town over there, it was worth 5. And like, I don't want to walk over there and give them 5. I don't even like that guy in that county. I'll give you 4. And the guy's like, okay, fine, 4 shillings. You should be able to walk into a grocery store and be like, oh, this apple doesn't look very good. Like, I'm not paying, like, I wouldn't buy this at $1.50, but I'll give you 50 cents for it. There should be an AI cashier that says, yeah, okay, like, it should be able to calculate the odds of getting the full price for that item at any point in time, and realize that like 50 cents now or half price now is going to be more valuable than any future transaction. And it's the whole idea of like, maybe you walk into a clothing store and you see a nice shirt, you're like, $65? Like, no way am I paying that. I'll give you 20. And they're like, look, sir, can't give it to you for 20. That's way too low. But the AI knows that it's been sitting on the shelf for 6 weeks. And it's like, okay, maybe a new season is coming up soon. So it's kind of just like sales on the fly, promotions on the fly, like $40. And you're like, 40? No way, 29. And it says 34, final offer. So you could get something nearly half off in real time just by bartering with the system. Like, that is my dream for AI, where you can haggle for what you value the product to be. And instead of like things just being a hard price, no, it should be about getting rid of inventory and maximizing the results. Like, if you're going to put some items on sale in a couple of weeks, just do that now. And like, what do you think? That's one of my dreams for sure. And now slightly more practical, because I don't think AI is going to be used like that in a business sense, or at least I can't really see it being used like that. I think there's going to be a lot of more AI based on the human consumer experience. So something like an AI shopper. Would you ever use an AI shopper that, maybe it browses Amazon for you, and at the end of the day, it gives you 10 items that, maybe you haven't seen before, but you'd probably like. And I think something like that could work as long as the AI never makes the purchase for you. Now, I think there will be AI that purchases things for you. Like, hey, I know you've been buying, what's something reusable? Like, you can buy groceries off of Amazon. Like, I get my protein granola bars off of there. So maybe I had just bought a couple boxes and I'm not like actively checking Amazon because I already have what I wanted. Maybe the AI could see that, oh my God, it's half off. I just bought you 5 more boxes. And you're like, well, I don't really need them, but thanks for looking out for me. You saved me more money in the future. But would you ever trust an AI to make decisions like that for you? Maybe there'd be like a fashion AI that, you give your measurements to, and it goes looking for clothing that would fit you well. Again, I think it would be great as long as it never makes the purchases for you. But of course, there will be people who get sick of having to approve these AIs, and they're like, yo, just go make some purchases for me. My question is, like, what does the AI need to prove to you before you give it the keys to the car? That's a good segue. What needs to happen before you let the AI car drive for you? Because people already let the driverless cars do their thing. Automated vehicles. I don't think I'll ever take my hands off the wheel. I don't see how that is an appropriate strategy for survival. I was talking to my brother about this recently, and he was saying that, like, why would you ever buy a car these days? Because in 5 years or in 10 years, it's all going to be autonomous. But then he mentions, well, in Canada, how's the AI ever going to drive a car when there's snow on the ground? If it can't see the road, like driving in snow, you got to pay attention. Like it's not hard. It's not easy. It's like an active participation thing where, you can't screw up, and it's kind of easy to screw up. Like, you got to pay attention to what you're doing. So how would an AI system ever be able to drive when there's snow on the road? My point was, well, sure, I don't know how it would do that right now, but the whole thing is that the AI is going to figure it out, or we'll just ask an AI to solve that problem for us. Like, any problem that humans can't solve, AI is going to be able to solve, so I don't see any long-term problems existing in that same way. And I mentioned that, if I was the only autonomous vehicle on the road, I'd feel pretty unsafe. But if every single vehicle was autonomous, I feel like there would be a level of comfort or security when you get the feeling that, oh, well, you just hope the network is talking to each other. And like, why would the AI crash if they're all AI? Like, if they're all talking to each other, I think you'd feel pretty safe. But to just hand over the steering wheel to a computer, like, it's just why would you take the risk? And it's one of those, like, if you had an important job at work, would you give the work to your intern? Like, what if something went wrong? Your boss is going to blame you. You can't just be like, oh, well, I told my intern, my assistant, to do it, and they're the one that screwed up. You're like, that's not the point. You were given the job. You're given the job of road safety. You have to get to your destination safe and sound. Why would you give that job to the robot? my brain can't wrap my head around. Does that make any sense? Why a human would take their hands off the wheel? Like, you got the license, you have a driver's license, you're in control. Why would you ever give up control? It just, and I feel that way about smart homes and stuff. Like, saying, "Hey Alexa, turn on the lights." Like, why'd you give the AI the power, or why'd you give, I don't know what you call these smart homes. Like, why are you giving the home, the technology, any power over your reality? It doesn't sit right with me. And I'm someone who loves technology, future tech pilot right here. And I'm just like, well, like, why? Like, I don't get it. Okay, last quick topic. Voice actors online recently upset about people using their voices trained with AI to produce not safe for workplace mods for video games, and basically using their voices to say things they would never say. And that would suck. I think it could happen to anyone who's ever put their voice online. Apparently, all you need is like a second of your voice and you can have it recreated. And it's a huge issue. I completely respect the outrage. It would feel very personal if someone took your voice and applied it. Even if you agreed with what the voice was saying, if it wasn't you, it would feel very wrong. And I don't begrudge the pushback. However, it also seems like a losing battle in the sense that the battle's already been lost. If voice actors and actors really wanted to stop this technology, they needed to have the foresight to have stood up, called their congressman, rallied people online like 9 years ago. They need to have seen where this technology would go. Because now that the technology is here and there are really no regulations against it, what are you getting mad for? Like, what are you going to do? It seems way more to me like you just got to throw your hands up in the air and say, well, that's not me. This goes for deep fakes. There are celebrities that have their faces put on, adult content, and that sucks. It's awful. There just seems to be no way to win. And like, I get that it's not just the worry that someone's going to use your voice to say something wrong, but in the sense that you're seeing in real time that your job no longer needs to be done by you. And I think there were calls for like, oh, well, we got to shut these services down. But then other people have pointed out, like, what about impersonators? And, Morgan Freeman, this is just an example. Morgan Freeman might not want his voice to be replicated. And he could threaten to sue any company that trained his voice and releases a model for it. But what about Morgan Freeman impersonators? Is the human still allowed to use their voice, even though it sounds like yours? Like, let's say you were making a video game and you wanted to have a character that sounded like Morgan Freeman. Well, you probably can't hire Morgan Freeman. I mean, that sounds expensive. So you describe his voice and you hire someone who can do a voice like that. What's the difference between hiring that person and getting an AI to do the Morgan Freeman voice? Like, AI is such a tool that I don't see the difference between how a human uses their talents and how an AI replicates. Sure, you could talk about the training data, but even then, a person hears a voice and they do the impression. That's like the exact same thing the AI is doing. It hears the voice and it does an impression, and maybe it does a really good impression, and that can be a bit of a problem. But I just feel like the outrage needed to be done 10 years ago. Doing it now, you've already lost. You've already lost. It's already here. It can already be done. It's already been done. I don't really want to end this podcast on a negative note. I don't think all of this is bad for humanity, but I do find it interesting to see which groups of people get outraged at which time. When I think that, if you could go in a time machine and go back to 2014, 2015, if you could rally all artists and everyone together That's how you could stop whatever future we live in right now. And I feel like we just have to smile and make the best of it, like I try and do with my YouTube channel, because I don't see any other option. Any fight you put up with now, I think, is a loss. It's an automatic loss. If you knew you were going to lose the fight, would you fight? And some people would say, well, yeah, you go down with your pride. And I'm just thinking, like, yes, I get that. If Genghis Khan is terrorizing your village, you know, you fight back, you fight for what's yours. But if Genghis Khan shows up and kind of tries to shake your hand and says, you know, we want this and we're going to take it. Do you want to give it to us? I think you take the deal. Like, I think if you can not fight a losing battle, that's the answer. But I don't know. I think everyone's different. It's just playing the odds. If I said I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 1,000, okay, I got it. Guess. And if you get it wrong, you owe me $10,000. Would you play the game? Like, you're gonna lose, probably. So, like, why try? Why take swings at it? I don't know if that makes any sense to you guys, but that is how I feel about AI. And you sort of need to embrace it because you can't beat it, I think. I don't know. Let me know what you think. I'll try and do this more often. I should do it more often. I have lots to discuss. But, I was sick for like 2 weeks, like 15 or 16 days. I had a bad cold in July. And yeah, and it's been going around. One of my buddies has it now too. And yeah, no, excuses suck. No, I'm not trying to make excuses. I'll focus on this podcast. I'll try and get a better screen here to show off some pictures. Try and increase the production. Just want to say, hope you're all doing well. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Peace.